And we're back. We're recording this time.
Awesome.
I am here with Colin Spicer, the top real estate agent in the Boise area, Treasure Valley.
Yeah.
And I have some questions, and I thought I'd present them to you. And thank you for your time.
Absolutely. I'm excited to talk about it. My two favorite things, talking about Idaho and real estate.
Well, let's do both.
Okay.
So the first question I have is, what seems to be driving so many people to the Treasure Valley?
Yeah. I'll start with, my own reason, which I think is probably similar for a lot of people, is quality of life. Right now, the top three things last year that somebody said that the reason that they were moving to Idaho is, number one, be closer to family and friends. Number two, job opportunities or relocations. And then number three, outdoors, quality of life, and peace are the three biggest drivers right now.
So I have a really close friend, and he and his wife, now that the children are older and growing, are going to retire, and they just bought a place in Star, and they're very excited. But, that kind of brings up the question of the, say, 55 plus and higher income. How is that shaping the Valley?
Yeah. I would say it's becoming much more common right now. If you look at inbound migration, anywhere between 30 to 35,000 net new people every year to the state of Idaho, right? That's not just the Treasure Valley, but Idaho in total, just at 2 million people. But that's not slowing down. The net differential is 15% between people moving in versus people moving out. But you have, a lot of folks, I think 3 out of every 4 people right now that are moving in are 55 and older, right? So they're coming here to finish their careers or retire, be closer to their family. And a lot of people are coming in from out of state, right? California, 3 out of every 5 new people coming into Idaho are from California. Obviously, that's bringing a lot of cash flow, a lot of equity from their living situation in California to here. That's driving the luxury market up. You have a lot of people coming in from Texas. And I believe it's the cow states, California, Oregon, Washington, right? Texas. And then New York City was the 10th fastest inbound city to Idaho. So, you just have people that are leaving mostly bigger cities, right, that are in strong equity positions and, can afford to buy something much bigger here or custom build something, have some acreage, have some space. And that's driving the luxury market. Right now, the luxury market is 10%. The top 10% of the market in real estate right now is luxury in the Valley.
So would you say this inbound migration is accelerating, stabilizing?
I would say accelerating. Yeah. Last year, Idaho was the 6th fastest inbound migration state of any other states in the U.S. That was 2nd fastest in the West behind Oregon. So there's no signs of it slowing down. There's 800,000 people in the Valley right now, and estimates are by 2040, there's going to be 1.2 million. So, you're still a micro market or a regional hub, but I think we're going to see that change drastically over the next 10 to 20 years.
So this must have a huge impact on inventory. When we're looking at it, how does new construction measure up? What's the percentage or the ratio of new construction versus existing?
Yeah. At least for the month of December in 2025, new construction was 46% of the available inventory.
So almost half.
Almost half. 1 out of every 2 homes, which is amazing as well, right? You think about people that have the opportunity to purchase a home, something brand new that, maybe they can either partially or fully, custom design. They're not having to ask questions about how old's the water heater or the roof, the HVAC, they know everything that they're getting, right, in a new construction home. So
new construction warranty and
Yep. Got a bumper to bumper full year, or maybe a 210 warranty. So, it's definitely a nice benefit to have right now.
So are there incentives that some of these builders are putting out there to try to entice the incoming people?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the builders in the Valley have done a really good job of looking at, hey, what are the biggest problems or barriers to entry for consumers right now? I think tackling interest rates has been of the utmost focus, right? You think about interest rates were 9% in 2022 coming out of COVID. Now we're back down in the low 6s. We even touched 5.99 for a day in early January. But for a lot of people, the interest rate was stopping them from making a move, right? They bought a home in the last 5 years and they had a 3% interest rate. They don't want to give that up and go double it to a 6 or 7%, right? So helping them get their interest rate to get their monthly payment in a good place, as well as helping with, ultimately down payment to get in, helping them with their closing costs, prepay maybe some of their HOAs or their property taxes. There's a lot that buyers are able to do with some of these big incentives that builders and lending teams are offering.
And with all those incentives, which sound very exciting, is there a certain amount that you would say is kind of the get in price if you were a new person looking for buying either your first house or settling out here?
Yeah. On average, median home sales price in the valley between Ada County and Canyon County is right around 500 to 520,000. And that is a net increase of, I think, 3.5% price increase in 2025 versus 2024. So new construction is still going to continue, right? There's costs for the builders that continue to go up and development teams as well. But on average, anywhere between 5 to 525, depending on where you're buying.
And for anybody out there concerned, do you see tariffs playing a role in any of this increased in cost?
It's a great question. I know when that was first announced back in April of 25, there was, widespread panic and a lot of, I think, misinformation. But, ultimately, it'd be a really good question to ask home builders. What I read in our reports was that the average new construction home last year was $9,500 more expensive to build than the year before, and partly related to cost increases, right? Lumber, material, finishes, countertops, appliances, you name it. So, it's more expensive for the builder to continue to build. That price is obviously, that cost is going to get built into the price, or it's going to get, potentially passed on to the consumer.
You just are a wealth of information.
I don't know about that.
Can you help me understand this? When somebody says that something has a 2.5 to 3 months inventory, what does that mean for buyers and sellers?
There is 2.5 to 3 months worth of available homes in the valley to buy right now. So if construction completely stopped tomorrow, there would be enough homes available for 2.5 or 3 months, basically until, call it April, before we would completely run out of homes between new construction and available homes, right? If nobody else put their house on the market and we stopped building homes, that's how much supply is left. A balanced market is 6 months. That's the goal, is to speed and accelerate home building so we can get to more of a balanced market, which will have supply and demand effect.
But with home sales projected to rise by 14%, what will that do to the inventory?
Yeah. I think a lot of it depends on seasonality, right? If you look at a full calendar year, what are the peaks and valleys of when people put their homes on the market or decide to pull them back off? 40% of the real estate market's done in the spring, right? March, April, May. 20% or 25% done in the summer. And then another 25%. We actually saw a pretty big fall last year. And then the rest of the months sprinkled in between. But it really depends on when people are putting their homes on the market. I think we're going to see anywhere between 14 to 20% increase in home sales this year. It's going to be a big rebound year in real estate. But new construction is not going to slow down, right? It's just it's an absorption rate, as builders will say. How fast am I moving inventory versus how fast am I building it, right? So it really depends on when people decide to list their homes, and a lot of it, I think, it depends on resale market too. Resale consumers, when are they deciding to put their home on the market? How long does it take for them to move their house and get it sold? But all the while, new construction builders are trying to build as fast as they can. They just got to limit some liability, right? Because they got to sell homes at the same time to keep building. So,
all right, now the $1 million question: are we moving towards more of a competitive or balanced market?
Yeah, I would say, if somebody said, is it a buyer's or a seller's market right now? I would say up until about a month ago, I would say it's pretty balanced. It's neither. Just based on the amount of inventory versus, rate of purchase. I would say that it's tipping a little bit more towards a buyer's market, at least personally for me, from what I've seen. I think that there's a lot of options and a lot of inventory for people to choose from right now. They get to be very selective, and there's lots of options, which helps them negotiate on price or, potential discounts or seller concessions. So I've seen personally it be a bit more of a buyer's market, but I'd be curious to ask a very experienced listing agent that has, over a dozen listings right now. They might think differently, but it's kind of somewhere in the middle between a buyer's and a seller's market right now.
Okay. And as interest rates continue to lower, do you see that that'll shift at all?
Yeah. So I think there was a stat that was shared that said that every tenth of a point that a rate ticks down, or even last year it was, if rates move from 7% down to 6% or tuck just inside 5
Mm-hmm.
in the fives, that opens the gate for 4 million additional home buyers that are now eligible to buy a home in the United States. So it's vastly important, not just for people to feel psychologically better about, okay, I wasn't cool with the rate in the 6s or 7s, especially if I have a 2.5 or a 3 that I got during COVID, but I'm cool with something in the 5s and I can make that work and the payment's okay. But for a lot of people, it's the eligibility to qualify to buy a home. So that makes a huge difference if we move towards the 5s, being able to get a lot of people more eligible to buy.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, now we're going to move on to a little section I like to call strategy and opportunity.
Okay.
Kellen, what's the number one mistake you see in pricing and presentation?
Well, I can certainly say I've learned by trial and error, and I've no doubt perfected it by any means. I think that there's some really key things. You mean if people are listing their house?
Correct. Yeah. If somebody's selling their house, what mistakes do they make? What's the number one red flag you're saying, hey, shouldn't do that?
Yeah. Yeah. I think that we have a lot of people that have bought in the last 5 years. If you've bought a home in the United States in the last 5 years, on average, you have 70% equity in your house, a 70% equity increase. That's insane. Never before seen in America. That also created a lot of expectation around, okay, well, if I'm going to sell my house, I expect to get the pricing that I would have got during COVID, right? That's an anomaly. I think you're having to talk to more people about being realistic with pricing and where they're listing their price. If you overprice it, it's going to sit. And part of that is because there's a lot of options right now for buyers, right? So pricing is key from the jump. You have to have realistic expectations and discuss with your realtor about pricing. Second, and I just had this happen in one of mine, is staging the house, right? People want to visualize themselves living in a house. If it's completely bare and there's no furniture, or if it's the seller's furniture, that might be okay, but more often than not, they want to see what's possible, what they could do with the house, and what it would look like if they put in really nice furniture and decor. So staging from the jump, I think, is critical. I'll tell you a quick story. I learned that the hard way. I had a listing in 2025 where the initial price that I ran on the comps, the sellers were like, oh, wow, we're going to lose money based on where we bought it from. But I said, hey, look, we can either price to sell or we can price to sit. It's up to you guys. But based on my data, here's where I think it needs to be. And they ended up listing at that price. I also suggested staging, right? It had been an investment property for them. Hey, we don't really want to sink $1,500 into staging. And, we want to sell it for as much as we can and get out as quick as we can. Okay. We had 9 or 10 showings in the first 30 days. And most consistent pieces of feedback that we got were, it's hard to picture the property when it's completely bare and vacant. You should have furniture in there. And number 2, just deep clean. That was another piece for people. Talk to the sellers. Hey, we're 30 days in. We've had 9 showings. We've had no offers consistently. Here's the feedback that we've had. 5 days later, we staged it. We did a deep cleaning. I had 9 showings in the next 4 days, and I had an offer on my desk 5 days after we staged it. And then we got under contract. So it took 45 days from list to get under contract. But had they done that from the jump, who knows, right? May have.
I mean, and who knows? Was it the cleaning or was it the staging or was it both? I mean, we'll never know.
We don't know. we don't know. But
I want the answer. You got to tell me the answer.
I think I think especially when you can resequence photos, right? If you stage a property and you have photos redone like I had to, and then you resequence them online, people are paying attention to those first 5 or 6 photos, right? First thing they're looking at is the exterior of the house. They're looking at the kitchen, primary, and then living or entertainment room. Any pictures after that, you lose a lot of people. So they need to be those first thumbnails that they see. And if you have really strong staging and presentation in those first few photos, I think you're going to get a lot more traffic.
Now, is this same regardless of where your house sits? If you're in the luxury market, do you feel that this is the same, way to get your house to sell fast versus sitting for a while?
Yeah. I would say absolutely. I mean, new construction, especially new construction luxury, like custom. I mean, I've been fortunate enough to go and sit in a lot of Parade Homes houses that are absolutely beautiful. There are some incredible custom home builders in the valley. And I think they would tell you that staging is key. And so would the realtors that represent them. Staging is key. And it's expensive, right? It comes at a cost, but if you're selling a $2 million home and it's not staged or it's completely bare, that may be the difference between somebody walking across the street or down the block and looking at another home in that same price range that's beautifully staged with great decor, and it's just a whole different feel. They have to feel like they can see themselves living in that house. So
They want it to be a home.
they want it to be a home. Very good.
Well, yeah. Okay, Kellen, I'm gonna put you on the spot here a little bit, okay? If we are looking at the market and looking at people that are trying to get in and acquire an investment property, what demographic do you see that's typically dominating right now?
Moms and pops.
Okay.
Moms and pops. And there's a few reasons for that. Number one, there was some data that was published last year that said that it's going to be much more common in households this year to be purchasing secondary properties. Part of the reason for that is you have, on average, on any home in America, any homeowner right now on average has 44% loan to value in their house across America, right? That's a pretty good loan to value situation. 40% of homeowners right now across America don't have a mortgage. It's completely paid off. They're sitting on great equity positions. Cash flow situations are in really good spots. So they're coming in with a lot of buying power. You're also going to see too, and those investment properties might even be gifting those to their kids, right? They might be charging somebody for rent, or they're giving cash to their kids or their grandkids to help them afford to buy a home. Right now, average age of a first-time home buyer is 40 years old. It's the highest in U.S. history, right? That's a huge problem. But you're seeing gifts to kids or grandkids, or they're buying investment properties and renting it out to their kids and maybe some of their college roommates, right? And it's creating positive cash flow situations. But the boomer generation, boomers and Gen X are 2/3 of the real estate market right now.
So, and you kind of mentioned rentals. So, are we seeing a lot of rentals in the Treasure Valley? Like, what areas are you seeing the most amount?
Yeah, I mean, it can really be all over. I'm seeing rent prices have steadily increased over the last 4 or 5 years, especially through COVID timeframe. You're starting to see rent prices stabilize a little bit more and taper off, which I think is a good thing. But it really depends on, I would say, just like any homeowner that's going to buy, location, location, location. Are you close to the things that people need to do and want to do, right? They need to be close to their job if they don't want to commute. They need to be close to things that they want to do. Are they close to the river, the green belt? Are they close to shopping, outdoors, recreation? A lot of popular rentals are close to colleges, Boise State, downtown, College of Idaho out in Caldwell, or Northwest Nazarene in Nampa. There are a lot of opportunities right now for people to buy for kids that are high school, college age, or just out of high school and college age. So I would say location means everything, but do your homework on what you're buying in what area to make sure that it's a positive cash flow situation, but you're also sitting on that dirt and that equity that you can turn around 3 years, 5 years later and make a pretty good profit on.
Now, with all this growth, right, that's the overarching thing. We just hear about everything expanding. I'm assuming businesses are also expanding, which probably means that we're having more of a workforce coming in. Are we seeing an impact of that on the rental opportunity in the Treasure Valley?
Yeah, it's interesting because some of the data at the year end last year for 25 talked about one of the problems that still exists right now in the valley is um, household income is not keeping pace with cost of living, right? And a lot of that has to do with job opportunities. As much as you see these splashy headlines, and there's tons of growth, right? Micron and their hub facilities and their expansion, that's supposed to create anywhere between 10 to 15,000 new jobs over the next 10 plus years. I mean, that's going to be monumental, huge. Um, Simplot, Albertsons, Boise Cascade, some of these major employers, but feedback from people that have bought and maybe even moved back out of the state have said, hey, it's hard to either get a job in Boise or it's hard to get a job that's going to pay me what I was making elsewhere, right? To make it work. So I think you have to get household income and earnings up to speed with where cost of living is, because cost of living has continued to go up here. I think if you've talked to anybody that's been here for a long time, they would say cost of living has become much, much higher. We can't price those people out of wanting to live here, right? Everybody should be able to afford to buy a home or have an opportunity after they rent to be able to own a home in the valley. So that's got to improve and get more in line.
And with specific rentals, I heard that there's something around 10,000 unit shortage, right? Isn't that just going to keep the price high, making it harder for people to make wages in order to get in there? So shouldn't we be addressing that rental issue?
Yeah, I
I
think
guess rental inventory issue is what I should be saying.
yeah. So that was the statistic that was shared with us last year from some of the big developers and builders in the valley was, hey, there's a 10,000 unit shortage in high density right now, meaning condos, apartments, townhouses, and it's pricing a lot of people out, right? Not they're just continuing to rent, not being able to buy. So I think you're creating more opportunities the more that those are being built. And you drive anywhere around a 3 or 4 mile radius from downtown, you're going to see a lot of condos, townhouse, apartment projects going up, in the 300s, 400,000s, right? So it's below that median home sales price of 500 at the get-in price, if you will, in the county. But it's creating opportunities for people to still be able to go and own and purchase and invest in their future. But we've got a long way to go. And part of that's the home inventory too, right? 2.5, 3 months of home inventory. A balanced market is 6 months. So there's a lot of new construction that needs to continue to happen. So
Now, with mortgage applications up 16%, what does that signal if we're looking at kind of the whole national metrics, I guess, if you will?
yeah. I think it's a positive indicator. One, I think that happened in the first week or two to start the year. Mortgage applications were up 16%. That tells me that there's renewed confidence from people. Maybe there's a bit of a mindset shift coming into the new year and setting their goals for the year. But I think part of that has to do with interest rates. Came down for a hot minute. We were at 5.99 on a 30-year, I think January 8th or 9th. Psychologically for people, that's a big mindset shift. All of a sudden, interest rates are now in the fives. We haven't seen that since 2021. It's been almost 5 years since we've seen interest rates that low. So I think you're seeing renewed confidence from people. And I think the best way you can add value right now, realtor, lender, anybody, is have the conversation. If somebody is thinking about potentially wanting to own a home, a lot of them, it's just education. They don't necessarily know, what do I need to have to pre-qualify, right? I was always under the assumption when I was in my 20s, like if I want to buy something, I've got to have 20% down cash. I don't have that kind of money. And that's the only way I'm going to be able to do it. And then, oh, by the way, my payment is going to be double what I'm paying for rent right now. And honestly, my mindset was shifted a lot when I talked to my dad. And my dad walked me through a lot of the misnomers about what you need. You don't always have to have 20% down. I've helped people buy that have 3.5%, 5%, 10% down FHA or VA. So a lot of it's just helping educate people and helping them understand what they need to do. And a lot of it too is, hey, you need to go do some work, right? You got to work on your credit score. You got to get your credit score up a little bit. Hey, you got to tackle some of this debt over here that you've got because banks don't look favorably on that, right? So a lot of it's just education. Yeah.
That's great. Now, with price cuts, do you see that as like a post-pandemic correction, or do you see that just kind of as a normalization?
Um, I think it can be a little bit of both, but I think you're seeing a little bit more of a normalization, right? I mentioned,
So it's not a warning sign. It's just kind of something that happens.
I think so. I think anybody that's been in this industry a long time, and I obviously talk to my dad a lot. He's been in the real estate market now for 44 years. Like, there's peaks and valleys. It ebbs and flows, and it always corrects itself. You have these massive peaks, and then you have these big dips coming out, but then it goes right back up. So it's just like the stock market. Like, but I think you're starting to see some normalization happening with pricing, um, partly because artificial pricing took place during COVID, right? When I when we bought our house in June of 2020, less than 2 years later, we could have flipped our house for twice what we bought it. That's not normal. That's not normal. The amount of appreciation and equity that we had less than 2 years after we bought our house should not be double what we bought it for, right? And then that normalized itself back out in the last couple of years. Um, I think that you're seeing people be more realistic with pricing. That's partly correcting itself. But also, you have to be cognizant. You can't price people out of the market, right? There's a lot of cash flow and luxury market people that can afford to do that, but the majority of the market is still going to be in that median home sales price range that can afford to buy a home. So you can't continue to outpace people on pricing versus what they're making and cost of living.
I mean, if we're going back, and you said you got a lot of advice from your father,
Yeah, yeah.
is there really truly a best time in someone's life to purchase, or is it like a personal decision? Are we looking at the market and saying right now is the best time, or is it really it's going to come down to each individual?
The latter, 100%.
Okay.
It is. There's a statistic that says that 9 out of 10 people that try to time the market, right? I'm going to time it when interest rates come down. I'm going to time it when, inventory is super tight, and I'm going to put my house on the market because everybody's going to want it and they're going to compete. 9 times out of 10 people miss because they try to time the market. So that is the answer I always give: is the best time to buy a home or sell your home is when you are ready to buy or sell a home, because everybody's situation is different. Every circumstance is different. When you try to time the market, what does that do? Well, that changes supply and demand. If interest rates tomorrow drop to 3%, what would everybody do? Everybody in the world is going to go either refinance their current rate, or everybody's going to get off the sidelines in droves and go to buy a home. What do you think that's going to do to home inventory? It's going to swallow it all up, right? And if builders are tight on inventory as it is, and now there's a ton of competition for a very finite amount of inventory, that drives prices up, right? So supply and demand, it should absolutely be when they feel the most comfortable to make a move is going to be the best time for somebody to make a real estate decision.
I love it. And so if you were to put into words for 2025, why was it so emotional for home buyers?
Yeah, I think there was a stat that said that 50% of people that bought a home last year that were surveyed said that they cried at least one point during the transaction journey, which is really sad.
It's supposed to be a happy event, not a sad. Why were they crying?
Look, for most people, right, this is the biggest financial decision of their lives, or one of the biggest. Money matters, right? Has a huge impact on your life. I've had some clients that I've talked to that have, been very emotional, and a lot of them are concerned, like, hey, I don't want to make a mistake. I'm going to put us in a situation that might put us into debt fast, or we're going to think we can afford it, but we really can't, and we're not going to notice until we get, down the road a ways. And so it's a very, very emotional decision. I like to subscribe to facts over feelings, right? What does the data tell you? What are the facts here? But you also have to be cognizant to listen to people, because everybody's needs are different as well. But the home buying process, and especially for people who, I talk to a lot of people from California, a lot. I've been in a lot of open houses, and there's a lot of people that are coming here from California, right? When I ask them, hey, why the move? It gets very emotional very quickly. Like, hey, I've lived in California my entire life. that's always been home. It was my parents' home, my grandparents' home. My whole family is down here. We have to move because of XYZ. You really start to hear from them very quickly, and it's sad. It really is sad because they're leaving. They're not just leaving the home that they've had, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where they've built memories and, raised their kids and, beautiful views or by the ocean, you name it, right? But they're leaving their families down there. They're leaving their relatives. It's a huge emotional change where they're having to go kind of branch out and create a new life, but they know that they can't operate there anymore, whether it's crime or it's politics or it's safety, schools, you name it. So for a lot of them, it's a huge emotional decision to have to, hey, my situation is so bad that I have to make a move now with my family. I'm going to have some courage and I'm going to come and make a different decision. So a lot of it's just, you have to have empathy, right? You have to have empathy for people in their situations. There is a formula that exists that says that people will not make the decision to purchase a home until this equation is balanced. Their current situation and motivating factors have to be greater than symbol concerns about cost and fears about moving. And I can tell you that I have found that to be 100% true in people that I have spoken with or that I have worked with, because people can talk themselves out of anything. And when they find other people to help them talk themselves out of it, it becomes very easy. But their current situation and motivating factors to make a move has to be greater than concerns about costs of moving and what are the fears associated that I have with moving. That was a lot longer answer than you wanted.
That was good. When you're talking with your dad, right, who has a background in this as well, what are some of the things that are different that buyers and sellers are requiring from the realtor now versus 10 years ago?
That's a great question. I mean, I think, I think what you hear and read in the headlines can be a lot different than what the survey says from people that are involved in real estate transactions and what they have to say about realtors, right? A lot of common headlines are they're overpaid for what they do, or, I always feel like they're not on my team, or they're playing both sides, or, whatever the case may be. Ironically, the average commission rate that a realtor is making is the same that it was back in 2005. 60% of people in 2005 that were surveyed that made a real estate move said that they used a realtor. As of 2025, that was almost 90% of people. So there's actually been an even bigger movement for people to use a professional to help them in a real estate move than there was 20 years ago. In the last 10 years, what's changed? I mean, social media is a major, major player there. I mean, having a social media presence, I think just the avenues for people, clients, consumers to find you is vastly different than it was even 10 years ago. I mean, my dad was in the pre-internet stage, right? You're putting ads in the newspaper and your yard signs out front, and you're hoping you get a phone call from maybe a couple different avenues. Today, you might get leads from Nextdoor, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn. Yard signs, print ads. Walk-ins to the brokerage. There's so many different ways that people want to try to reach people. And I think the technology age has changed things a lot. I read a stat too that said that 1 out of every 3 people that are looking to buy a home are utilizing AI to assist in their search, not just for their home, but for a realtor to help them in buying a home. So I think AI is, as everybody has said, is changing the game completely. It's changing how people are searching for homes. 90% of people find a house online that they want, and then they need the realtor to help them handle seeing the home, making sure the condition's right, handling the contract, the paperwork, the negotiation, right? But there's less of realtors having to send and find people homes for them that they want. They find it, and then they need the realtor to help handle the rest of the journey. So that's a huge piece that has changed. I think realtors are also utilizing AI, and some of them very well, efficiently, in terms of how they're having it help them do a lot of what would normally be manual work that's helping them be in front of consumers more consistently and having to spend less time doing paperwork and administrative tasks. I think AI is helping carry the bag on a lot of that, which is really nice because ultimately, realtors, we want to be in front of people as much as we can, adding value, not behind the computer or handling paperwork. So,
So with all these technology advancements, couldn't you say it'd be easier to fake it, right? I bet there's a lot of people out there that aren't closing deals. How are you able to spot a pro realtor versus one of these amateurs or somebody that's just really good at social media marketing?
yeah, it's, I feel like every day that I'm scrolling my feed, there is some sort of new, hey, here's how we're going to help you get leads, or hey, here's why you need to work with me as a realtor. I mean, and I'm guilty of that too, right? Like last year, though, statistically, right? Let's stick to the facts. 71% of real estate agents didn't sell a house last year. There are 2 million licensed realtors in the United States. 1.5 million of those 2 million are actively practicing right now. 71% of that 1.5 million didn't do a single transaction last year. So 1.1 of 1.5 million realtors did not sell a house last year. So you really have 300 to 400,000 realtors, give or take, that are doing the majority of the real estate business for people. To me, I think that creates, you have to determine, is this somebody's part-time gig? Is it their full-time gig, right? A lot of people just have their license to do a deal or two a year, help out a friend or a family member, and that's fine. There's a space for that. But I think if you are looking to have somebody that's a professional that does this full-time, they live, eat, sleep, breathe this industry, they understand what's going on, it's worth vetting them. Look at their volume, look at their production, right? Look at the clientele that they're working with. I think presentation is everything. Do they make time for you? Do they show up? Do they treat you as the client like you're the only client that they have, right? That's a big Brian Buffini model. Is a lot of people are worried about how they're going to hit their transaction goals and their commission goals for the year, but what does the client feel about how you're handling them? And I've had some clients that have said, like, I had no idea if you had other deals going on or not when you were helping me because you made me feel like I was the only client. That's the goal. Like that is truly the goal. So, um, but I think that number, that statistic is actually, unfortunately, it's getting worse every year. 2 years ago, 3 years ago, I think it was 48% of the realtors in the US didn't sell a house. And now 71% didn't sell a house last year. That's gotta improve. There's a pretty low barrier to entry to get into this business. But the true professionals that are producing every year and helping people, you can spot those professionals pretty easily, right? They've got strong professional marketing and presence, and also it's what their clients say about them. Go look at their Google reviews, go look at their client reviews. I mean, there's a reason that people stay in this business and are successful, and it's because they're very professional in what they do.
So, Kellen, you mentioned the Gen X and the Boomer taking up a majority of the real estate market. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah. So right now, boomers and Gen X make up 2/3 of the real estate market in the United States, right? And keep in mind too, for boomers, we talked about 40% of people in the U.S. don't have a mortgage right now. That's insane. That is insane, the amount of equity that they're sitting on, and good for them. There was different incentives and programs for boomers to be eligible to buy a home and government assistance back in the 60s, 70s, 80s. No offense, mom and dad, but a lot different than it is today. But you have a lot of people that don't necessarily have any motivation to move. They have no debt on their house, right? They don't need to sell and upgrade. A lot of people are downsizing. Why would I go and upgrade if it's going to make me have to get a loan or have debt, right? Or, hey, I'm good. I bought in 2020 and I got a 3% interest rate and I got a $2,000 a month mortgage payment. Why would I go and buy something else and double my interest rate to 6%? Now I'm paying $4,000 or $5,000 a month. There's not a lot of motivation there for people to move. You're going to see a lot more, as we mentioned earlier, gifting from boomers and Gen X to their kids to help them be eligible. We mentioned first-time home buyer. Average age is 40 years old right now, highest in history. Crazy. Over the next 10 years, there's going to be the largest transfer of wealth that happens in U.S. history, to the tune of $40 trillion or more, as
Trillion with a
40
T.
trillion with a T.
Wow.
Brian Buffini stat right there, the largest transfer of wealth in American history. So as I think about that, I think about like, hey, for boomers or maybe even some silent generation that have kids or grandkids right now that can't afford to buy a home. One thing Brian Buffini said, like, host a webinar that helps teach their children or grandchildren what they need to do to be eligible to buy a home and get pre-qualified, or the importance of owning a home. That's a huge untapped opportunity right now. Also, are you building your sphere and your clients and database right now that are Gen Z, millennial, right? People that are going to be ready, maybe not now, but in the next 3, 5, 7 years as they inherit wealth, right? Or they receive gifts from their parents. Are you building that database really strong to be able to help educate them now so that they're ready to go as that transfer of wealth happens?
Do you see multi-generational homes becoming more common practice?
Very much so, very much so. And we see that a lot in new construction too. A lot of people that are moving are saying, hey, we're either downsizing or, we're following the kids up to Boise State or the grandkids. And, we're getting to that age where we can't necessarily care for ourselves. And that's hard. That's hard for people to be able to, to have to admit. But if we move in with our kids that are adults that can take care of us, we'll have our living quarters on one side of the house and you guys can be on the other. But it's helping kids not have to rent, right? And then they're eventually going to be able to own after that's passed on to them. And it's also helping the older generation that needs to either downsize or they need care in that house. And it's creating much more of a family focused dynamic in the house. So it's really mutually beneficial.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate it. Do you mind if we wrap up with a little bit of rapid fire questions?
Okay, let's do it.
What is the biggest myth about the Treasure Valley market right now?
That it's too expensive to live here.
The biggest myth about the Treasure Valley market is that it's too expensive to live here. Okay.
Yeah.
What's something buyers worry about that they shouldn't? I know I'm putting you on the spot with these.
Ooh. Down payment amount.
Okay.
Yeah. Down payment amount. They forget about the other things that are making them eligible to qualify: credit score, assets, cash flow, reserves. Everybody thinks that they need to have 20+% down to put on a house to get the payment in a good spot. That is not the case. And I would encourage them, call a lender, call a realtor, call somebody that can help walk you through that, because I hear all the time, I didn't think I was going to get qualified. I didn't think I could qualify. They have it in their mind. It's a limiting belief, right? It's a limiting belief that they can't get eligible to buy a home. Yeah.
What is one thing that sellers overlook that they absolutely should not?
Pricing and staging. I think staging maybe even more so. You can have educated conversations about pricing that are backed with facts and comps to support and what the market's doing. Staging is an important piece of marketing your home. People need to visualize themselves in it, not visualize themselves in your house. Yeah.
All right. This is going to be a tricky one. Okay.
Okay.
In 2026, rising home sales or rising home prices?
Both.
Both. Okay. Do you want to elaborate on that?
Yeah. I mean, projections are anywhere between plus 14 to 20% more home sales in 26 than there was in 25. But I think there's also a limiting belief that, hey, the prices have just continued to go up so high. At some point that's going to level out and it's going to go down. And then interest rates are also going to come down at the same time. So, I'm waiting for prices to drop 10% and I'm waiting for interest rates to get back in the 3s and 4s. That's not happening. And the cost to construct and the pricing of homes, right? People that own homes right now are not trying to hold on to their homes until they lose value, right? The longer they hold, the more the value goes up. So that is probably the biggest thing that people maybe don't understand right now, is that they're waiting for prices to come down. They're not going to come down. That's just not going to happen. That's a good catch.
So for anybody on the fence looking, what is some advice or what are the next steps they should take after listening to everything you've shared today?
Yeah, I think if you are curious about entering the home market, if you're a first-time home buyer, or this is maybe your second or third purchase and you've been holding off, I would make myself available for anyone at any stage. Sit down and have a cup of coffee. And even if it's we discuss and, hey, I've answered the questions, and what would you like to do? Do you want to engage or no? Even if that's a no, it's not a no forever. It's just a no right now. And that's totally okay, right? My job is to provide value to the best that I can, help answer your questions, help tell you what I think is happening and where things can go. And then ultimately, again, it comes back to when you are ready to make a decision. I always say having conversations are for free, right? So that I would encourage people to come with their questions. Let me try to provide value the best that I can. And then ultimately we go at your pace. We don't go at mine.